The Chicago Bears might not have won the offseason yet, but if they have an incredible draft on Thursday, then they just might win it in the month of April. This is the perfect draft outcome for the Chicago Bears. We're only doing first, second, and third round because there's 4 picks. And once we get beyond there, it is really too hard to be able to estimate where these players are going to go. So this is an estimation. We're talking about a number of players here, predicting who might get drafted and then where we could go if that were to happen. So starting off, first pick. Because of the great job that Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson did filling in 5 players in the trenches, the Bears needed 5 or potentially 6 this offseason to be able to be a legitimate force in the trenches. They needed a center, picked up one in Drew Dahlman. They needed a right guard, Joe Tooney, and they needed a left guard, Jonah Jackson. So they are coming together there. And then on the defensive side, they needed a defensive tackle to be able to fill in. I mean, Andrew Billings and Gervon Dexter weren't quite doing it all last year, so they brought in Grady Jarrett. I don't know if that's the move that everyone's happy about. And then on the edge, who's going to be the running mate with Montez Sweat? They needed a guy to be able to be a force off the edge alongside him. So they got Dayo Odeyingbo. So in this perfect draft for the Chicago Bears, we would be able to see them fill in best available. And why would they be able to fill in best available? It's because of the excellent job that the front office has done this offseason. They've put them in a position where really there aren't crazy needs on this team. You've got your quarterback of the future. You've got wide receiver weapons. You've got your offensive line filled in, the defensive line filled in. Your linebacker core is very strong. The secondary is strong. It's more so we got to add to this group. We don't know if the left tackle position is very good yet. Braxton Jones is a good player, but the contract is coming up. Are you willing to pay him? Maybe not really. DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson. Where is the elite playmaker in the Chicago Bears backfield? At tight end, there's Cole Kmet, but what about a potentially another guy to pair with him? Who at the edge spot could fill in with Montez Sweat, another youngster at the defensive line. Secondary, Jaquan Brisker, maybe not as healthy. Tyreek Stevenson, are the Bears brass, or the faithful, certainly are a little bit polarized on that subject for Stevenson. Do they draft a corner? There are so many different options, but I am going to start this off with the main possibilities, and these would be perfect outcomes based on this ending up happening. First, if the 10th spot, if the Bears ended up drafting Will Campbell, Bears fans would be very happy. This organization would be extremely happy. Forget about the arm length. This is an extremely talented player. Secondly, if you took Will Campbell, that still means that running back is a major need. Well, guess what? You can pick one up in the second round. Pretty much guarantee that Kinshawn Junkins or Travion Henderson will be there in the second round. So you'll take one of those 2 guys at 39. That still means that you're going to need a pretty good player at 41. It just depends on where you're going to go. Malachi Starks, how about that? Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard. Is Byard the long-term answer at safety? Probably not. Jaquan Brisker with the injury issues. So how about a 3-year starter with the Georgia Bulldogs? Drafting Georgia Bulldog defenders is never the wrong way to go. And then in the third round, you still haven't picked up that edge. How about Jared Ivey or Princely Umanmielen? One of those 2 Ole Miss players. And the Bears would be walking away with the haul of Princely Umanmielen, Jared Ivey, Malachi Starks, Travion Henderson or Kinshawn Judkins, and Will Campbell. That is one scenario in which we would be walking away extremely satisfied. How about this scenario? They get Ashton Jeanty. He doesn't go to the Raiders. Someone else doesn't trade up to get him. He falls to the Bears at 10. Well, you've got running back checked off, but you still sort of need a left tackle, and there's a lot of value there. Or continue to fill in on the defensive line. So, left tackle, is Josh Simmons there at 39? Is Josh Connerly there at 39? Is even an interior guy like Gray Zabel, could he be there? So that's where you would be looking at the 39 spot. As well as on the defensive side at 41, Kenneth Grant, is he potentially still available? Or Jordan Birch out of Oregon, 10.5 sacks a year ago, and ran a lot faster than people would think at 280 pounds. So that's where they would go. Jordan Birch or Kenneth Grant at 41, and then you're looking at the left tackle spot. Josh Simmons, Josh Connerly, Gray's able to fill that out. And then safety still would be a need in that scenario. So Xavier Watts, Kevin Winston Jr., would one of those players be available there at pick number 72? So you'd be walking away with potentially Kevin Winston Jr., Kenneth Grant, let's call it Josh Simmons, and Ashton Jeanty. We would be pretty darn stoked. Okay, the left tackle spot, we could talk about Kelvin Banks. It's relatively the same type of thing. What if something crazy happens? What if Mason Graham falls down to 10, which I'm telling you is frankly a possibility. This could happen. Mason Graham, let's just say he falls to the Chicago Bears at 10. This just got a lot easier. Well, you're going to need that running back. Again, Quinshawn Judkins, Travion Henderson. If by some miracle, potentially Marion Hampton is there, he's a Chicago Bear. So you would start off with Mason Graham, Quinshawn, or Travion. And then you're still going to need that offensive lineman. Well, we talked about 39, Josh Simmons, Josh Connerly, Gray Zabel. So one of those guys there at 41, and then same exact scenario, Xavier Watts or Kevin Winston are one of them there. Or would you go the route where you would go Malachi Starks at 41, and then Princely again, or Jared Ivey at edge at that 72 spot? So you would walk away with Mason Graham, Travion or Quinshawn, Malachi Starks, not bad, and then Princely Uman or Jared Ivey. Those are 4 different complete scenarios, 4 very realistic ones that the Bears could end up walking away with. I think you're starting to pick this up. The Bears have a number of routes that they could go with this draft coming up here for it to be very successful. How about this last scenario? We have talked about it with a lot of people. Some people are on the fence, but this is what happens when you have the trenches again filled in. You can take a guy like Tyler Warren at tight end or Colston Loveland. Frankly, I, as an Ohio State fan somewhat, would be perfectly fine with Colston Loveland. I know what he is. I know what Tyler Warren is. And I'll tell you, a lot of Bears fans probably watch the Big Ten quite a bit, but I watch a lot of Penn State and Michigan football, and I just have to say that they run their offenses through those tight ends. So this scenario where they take Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren at tight end, then you would be looking at a place where, okay, well, we're going to need to take someone in the trenches for the next 2 picks. We got our playmaker, Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, right? Let's say Ashton Jeanty was taken, but because we have the flexibility with our new revamped trenches, we can take a playmaker at the 10 spot. Okay, so at 39, Tyleik Williams could be there. Jordan Birch could be there. On the other side, you can see Josh Simmons available. Again, Josh Connerly, players we already talked about. So you're going to have your options to be able to take offensive lineman or defensive lineman. And then the other way that it goes, still a running back. We could still continue to add playmakers. So Travion or Quinshawn, again, one of those two. So 2 playmakers and then a player in the trenches because you already did the dirty work. And then again, if Malachi Starks is there at 41, we can start to get creative. And then backed up, we could be able to take a guy like Kevin Winston again, who we spoke about, or again, the Ole Miss players, Princely and Jared. So we are going to start this mock draft simulator to see all of the scenarios and see if our strategy, if you will, would hold up for the Bears to be able to come away with a perfect scenario. So here we go. So Mason Graham, we talked about him. All right, so Mason Graham's off the board, not a possibility. Will Campbell, we talked about him and how that would be great for the Bears to walk away with him. Ashton Jeanty just goes at number 9. So look at him staying on the board. That's Tyler Warren. But what about the left tackle out of Texas? Right, Kelvin Banks. So Kelvin Banks there at number 10. Or you could take Tyler Warren. Either way, we as Bears fans would be very happy. Let's go with Kelvin Banks. Let's continue to bolster the trenches. Don't think that you can go wrong taking a very good left tackle. If you ended up missing out on a good tight end like Warner, Colston, Loveland. Well, guess what? You've got Cole Kmet, a very good player. So as this holds up, we talked about how, again, that we would like to see a running back here. So let's see which running backs are available. Well, guess what? Quinshon and Travion are both available to us in that spot. As you would have imagined, as we can see here, Amarion Wentz. Kenneth Grant ended up going okay. Josh Simmons, we spoke about, but again, we got Kelvin Banks now. So again, the options. Let's see what tight end availability. Again, not really like the value of the tight ends there at 2. So we're going to go with the speedster from Ohio State, Travion Henderson. The Bears so far walk away with Kelvin Banks and Travion Henderson. Not a bad draft so far. And as we look at it, okay, so we saw Malachi Starks, I believe, go a little bit early along with Xavier Watt. So teams were looking to really hone into some of that safety talent. So the availability here at pick number 41 as we look through it. All right, so Banks went. Evan Winston is available. That is quite interesting for us to look at again. Preferably he would be there in the 3rd round. So let's take a look through what would end up being. Okay, there we go. Tyleik Williams at 41. We spoke about that a little bit earlier if we went the route of what could be available in the trenches. We talked about Tyleik. Donovan Jackson wouldn't quite need him at that point. We're looking at edge players. Connolly, again, not relevant at this point anymore. We're looking at defensive linemen, and then let's take a look at the edges, right? We would want to see what edge type of talent is available. We've already accounted for this situation. Okay. So definitely the pick right now is going to be Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. He would fit in perfectly, and you end up getting 2 Buckeyes there. So Travion Henderson and Tyleik Williams from the national championship Ohio State Buckeyes end up as Chicago Bears. And again, not going to be upset with that. Going to be extremely happy. Those are 2 phenomenal football players. Okay, so Jordan Birch ended up going an edge. Would have been looking at him, and guess what? There he is. Kevin Winston Jr. is still available. The safety out of Penn State with the injury, a phenomenal talent that the Bears could still go with there. Everything held up. We were talking about left tackle and then continue to bolster the trenches with another defensive lineman, either an edge or interior D-line. You can't really see them going with 3 trench players, like going left tackle, left guard, edge or D-tackle, edge, and then guard or tackle. And you would think that it'll be one player that's in the back end on defense or a playmaker because of what they did. They needed 5 or 6. They didn't need 8 total. So still going through this, want to make sure that we didn't miss anybody. Again, that this draft would end up being pretty unbelievable, that this is the way that it wound up. So Kevin Winston Jr., the Bears get a potential replacement for Byard or Brisker. We end up seeing how that plays out. But that would be Chicago Bears draft in 2025. Based on those principles that we talked about. And again, we're going to run through this simulation once again. But look at that haul. Look at that haul. Kelvin Banks, Travion Henderson, Tyleik Williams, and Kevin Winston Jr. Phenomenal. I mean, that would immediately make the Bears such a better football team. We're going to do one more here. 3 rounds, keeping it relatively slow and starting it up. Okay, so Cam Ward. Mason Graham, okay, that's an alert. He's gone. Travis Hunter, okay. Genty, alert there as well. Barron. Tyler Warren. All right, so we know who's available. Will Campbell's there. Immediately clicking on that. We're taking Will Campbell is there. So again, the principles. This is something that I would imagine the Bears are doing. Obviously something that's exactly like this. Again, their board might be a little bit different from mine. but you can see the different scenarios based on where the teams are picking ahead of them and then what direction that you would go. It's got to either be playmaker, like Warren Genty if they're gone, or you've got your big board of who that you will take for sure if they're still available. Okay, so at this slot, we are ready. Okay, so Campbell. So obviously we are going to be looking at a running back at this slot. And again, Travion and Quinshon Judkins are there. So let's just say we took Quinshon Judkins for the fun of it, even though both Henderson and Judkins. See what I mean? How one of those two is practically guaranteed to be available. Can't see them both going with Hampton. So we're going to see what? You'd have to see 4 running backs going in the top 38 picks for the Bears to miss out on one of those 4. Don't think that is at all realistic. Okay, so now we know we need someone on defense. Absolutely. Quinshon Judkins and Will Campbell have to look at the defensive side. So who is their corner? No, not looking or liking what we're seeing there. Safety, okay, no Malachi Starks, not going with safety. Now it's into the interior of the D-line. Yep, Tyleik Williams and Derek Harmon, we spoke about him. And then taking a look at what would be available at edge. Very nice. Okay, well, again, this is working. So let's go with the route of taking, would be spectacular. And this would be very, very fortunate. Again, Derek Harmon out of Oregon, taking him at pick number 41 at the second rounder. So Derek Harmon, Quinshon Judkins, and Will Campbell. Just think about the names and the power that comes with it. So now, okay, we took a defensive tackle, we took that left tackle, we took a running back. So now we're looking at the back end, to be frank with you. We're looking at a safety. Because Kevin Winston there, crossing our fingers that he's going to end up being there, because if he's not done, it's likely going to come down. There he is. Right, Kevin Winston is there. The Bears wanted to be able to take him, but also Jared Ivey and Jordan Birch. We talked about Jordan Birch potentially in the 4th round. So Ivey, Birch are still there. That would be ridiculous, as well as Kevin Winston. So they could go anyway. You want Jared Ivey paired up with Derek Harmon. So now you've got the rotational depth between Derek Harmon, Grady Jarrett, Andrew Billings, Gervon Dexter. And then at edge, defensive end, you've got Dayo Odeyingbo, Montez Sweat, and Jared Ivey. I mean, okay. Can like the sound of that. Or do we go with Kevin Winston and pairing him that rotation, Jaquan Brisker and Byard, and if there's health concerns, you go to it. I actually want to see what interior offensive line. Okay, so that makes sense. So very little options to go with early 3rd round. So what if they just committed? What if they just made the decision that, look, we really want to bolster the back end and help out Kevin Winston. We already took him, so let's go with another guy that we previously had talked about here. So why don't you take Jared Ivey? Good production with Ole Miss. So quite the haul. My goodness, if they were able to come away with that. Jared Ivey, Quinshon Judkins, Will Campbell. When you had that option, you're just mapping this entire thing out, and it just looks better and better every time we sort of scroll through as this mock draft sort of comes to a close. A lot of good players still left there at the end of that third round. So at the end, analyzing it, grading the draft, and boom, wow. I mean, talk about the trench help. Jared Ivey, edge, Derek Harmon. Talk about bolstering the trenches once more. Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks with Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, and Joe Tooney alongside Darnell Wright. That might be one of the most radical transformations we've seen from an offensive line. And then on the defensive side, talk about bringing in potentially Jordan Birch or Jared Ivey and then Derek Harmon or Tyreek Williams to go with Dayo Odeyingbo, Grady Jarrett to help out with Montez Sweat. Again, with the option for safety to bring in help. There are so many avenues that the Bears can go to. Well, it will come out extremely successful, and we will be happy. That's what I wanted to share, that Bears fans, you better be fired up, because the Bears are in a tremendous spot with these 2 very early second-round picks. They have the most power of pretty much any team in that top 45 range to have the guns to be able to move up, trade up if you need to, trade back if you don't like someone there, to be able to add capital. So 10 is such a great spot because you're going to be able to get that selection that we talked about between playmakers or trenches, whatever that you want to do. So thank you so much for watching. Know that was tongue-twisted and very quick, but you can see that we have been fired up going through these mocks and going through the best potential avenues where the Bears could wind up doing great in the NFL draft. But if they came up with something like this, which is very likely, which I want to remind you, that they could have another great offseason, be ready to roll going into training camp and next season. So thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and see you next time for more football content. Top Bears.